I've mentioned her name before. Di Ablewhite from the International Bomber Command Centre put a couple of paragraphs together for me to share on the website. And I thought I'd share that with you because it gives some background to the work that she did when it came to initially putting two and two together when it came to the crew of JB141. And she entitled this piece, Sharing a Wonderful Gift. Have you ever read a post on social media that touched you so much it moved you to take action? Last month I came across a poem that did just that. In July 2020, a gentleman shared the most... Gentleman, that's stretching a point. He shared the most beautiful poem that was written by his mother in 1943. As a keen researcher, particularly when it comes to Bomber Command history, this request was one I simply could not ignore to try to solve. The poem read as follows, and then she reproduced the poem. My post went on to read, I have a huge ask. I posted about my uncle the other day. My uncle Eric was in the Royal Air Force during the war. Well, at the same time, my mum was a teenager in Birmingham. A work colleague was having her 18th birthday, and Mum was quite excited to hear that a friend's brother would be there with his Lancaster crew. Inspired, Mum wrote the following ditty to present to them at the party. Unfortunately, by the time of the party, the crew had been lost. The poem sat in her book of poems for years until we found it not long before her death, a couple of years ago. Can anyone help identify the Lancaster and the crew from the detail in the poem? A long shot, I know, but could anyone help? That help would be gratefully received. Di then reproduced the poem in tribute to a gallant crew from a grateful British subject. All day I kept thinking about it, writes Di. How lovely it would be to know who she had meant these words for. I only had my phone, so knew I couldn't even try and find an answer till I got back. So I took a screenshot to look in detail when I got home. In theory, it seemed pretty straightforward. She'd named all the crew. What soon became apparent was somewhat obviously nicknames, not actual names, and no surname for Dinger or Corny could be found. That was one of my big initial disappointments and worries, that not finding a Dinger or a Corny was this really something that Mum had written from personal experience. Di goes on, my first stop was the International Bomber Command Centre Losses Database. First I searched for the Christian name, Norman. 686 of them. Then narrowed it down by aircraft type. The poem said it was a Lancaster, down to 264. Then I reduced it down to a time frame between 1943 and 1944. I was down to 217. A huge effort by Di, an absolutely monumental effort. Sadly, it's not possible to narrow down trade to pilot, so I took a look at all 217 entries. If the other crew names in the right position, searching all of 1943 resulted in nothing close. But then, in January 1944, a pilot named Norman with a bomb aimer called John. My hours of research had started to pay off. I was hopeful. I saw that another crew member was named Bell. Could that be Dinger? And another called Wheatstone. Could that be Corny? They all seemed to fit, apart from Barron. I wasn't 100% sure, but another ray of hope was that one of this crew was from Birmingham, near to where the author of the poem lived. So I replied to the original message saying there was a chance that this was the crew, but we needed firm proof to be sure. Di then goes on finding the relatives. As one of the volunteer researchers at the IBCC, the International Bomber Command Centre, myself and Reg then set about trying to find relatives of the crew, in the hope that one of them had a letter or some recollection of any use of these nicknames. Together we constructed the airmen's family trees and found hopeful contacts for 6 out of the 7 families. Reg made contact, and we have been provided with some wonderful photographs from that time, including the 2 crew photographs below. Then came a huge breakthrough. Reg had a reply from John Stanley's niece, the airman that lived in Birmingham. John Stanley's sister should have had her 18th birthday party in April 1944, and John should have been there with his crew, and so would have heard the poem. She also confirmed that her aunt knew Jean, my mum, through work. To our relief, the final piece fell into place, and we were finally able to share this gift with them. The families of the crew have now heard the poem that was meant to be a surprise at a party that sadly never happened. Tragic events overtook. And she signs off, lest we forget, remembering the crew of Lancaster JB141, 626 Squadron, lost 15 January 1944. I'm eternally grateful to the work that Di Ablewhite has done for me and for my family, but particularly for my mum and for the crew of JB141. So I'll try and recount in the next session how we actually found some of these people, some of the journeys that I've been through, and then I'll go on to look at some of the information that we've received along the way, and how we've managed to bring everything together, which will result eventually in this trip that I'm making to Germany in a couple of weeks' time.